Have you ever wondered why some people seem to win no matter what happens in the world, while others struggle just to keep their heads above water? Think about it. Every time the economy crashes, every time markets tumble, every time the news is filled with panic, there are always two groups of people. One group panics. They lose jobs, they lose savings, they lose confidence in the future. The other group, they don't just survive. They actually thrive. They find opportunities when everyone else sees disaster. They come out of downturns stronger, wealthier, and more resilient than before. And that's not luck. It's not a secret club. It's about understanding the rules of the game. See, money isn't random. Neither is success. History shows us that economies rise and fall in cycles. And if you learn to see those cycles, you can prepare for the storms instead of being swept away by them. That's exactly what Ray Dalio did. He's the billionaire investor who built Bridgewater Associates, the largest hedge fund in the world, over $150 billion managed at its peak, and he didn't get there by guessing. He studied 500 years of history, wars, financial crashes, booms and busts, the rise and fall of empires, and he found something shocking. The patterns repeat. Empires rise, dominate, they grow rich. Then they get too comfortable. They pile on debt, fight with each other, and eventually decline. It's not a maybe, it's a cycle. And if you're living in North America today, especially in the US, this should get your attention. Think about it. We've been told our whole lives that America is the richest, most powerful country in the world, that nothing could shake the dollar, that the system will always work in our favor. But what if history says otherwise? What if we're at the point in the cycle where things begin to break down, where wealth gaps widen, where political fights turn into something much uglier, where technology becomes both a blessing and a threat? The scary part, this isn't speculation. This is what has happened over and over again. From the Roman Empire, to the Dutch, to the British, and now, maybe to us. Here's the good news. You don't need to control the global cycle to protect yourself. You don't have to be a billionaire hedge fund manager. You just need to learn the principles that wealthy people already use. Principles that help them stay resilient when everything else is falling apart. That's what we're going to talk about today. The lessons, the story, and the timeless rules that can help you build wealth and stability in a world that feels more uncertain than ever. And trust me, by the time we're done, you'll see money, success, and even your own life cycle in a completely different way. Because here's the truth. If you don't understand how the game is played, you're not playing, you're being played. So stick with me, because in the next section, we're going to break down the 5 forces that shape every economy in history, and once you see them, you'll never look at money the same way again. Let's talk about the 5 forces that Ray Dalio says shape the rise and fall of economies. This isn't just about the stock market or the latest headline. It's about the deep patterns that have repeated for centuries. If you understand these forces, you can see the bigger picture and you can make smarter money decisions for yourself and your family. The first force is money and debt. Think of debt as borrowed time. When you take out a loan, you're spending money you haven't earned. That can create growth in the short term. People spend more, businesses invest more, the economy looks great, but debt is not free. Eventually it needs to be repaid, and if incomes don't rise enough to cover those payments, the whole system tightens. Spending slows, and a downturn follows. You saw this in 2008. Easy credit fueled the housing boom. People borrowed like crazy because it felt safe. Until suddenly it wasn't. When the bubble burst, jobs disappeared, homes were foreclosed, and the economy collapsed. Now let's connect this to your own life. Taking on a mortgage you can't afford might feel good at first. New house, new furniture, maybe even a new car in the driveway. But if your income doesn't keep up, debt becomes a chain. It restricts your freedom instead of creating it. The second force, internal conflict. This is about inequality, the gap between the top 1% and everyone else, when too few people have too much and too many people feel left behind. Society starts to fracture. In the US, think about the tension between Wall Street wealth and everyday workers living paycheck to paycheck. Think about how politics feels more divided than ever. That's the cycle playing out. Look back at history. In the 1930s, countries like Italy, Germany, Spain, and Japan shifted away from democracy during times of economic pain and inequality. When people lose faith that the system works for them, they stop playing by its rules. That's when things can get dangerous. The third force is geopolitical conflict. This is the battle between rising powers and existing powers. It has happened again and again. Rome fought Carthage, Britain clashed with Germany, the US clashed with the Soviet Union. Today, it's the US and China, and every headline about trade wars, technology bans, or military exercises in the Pacific is another symptom of that bigger cycle. The fourth force is nature. This one is easy to overlook, but natural disasters, pandemics, and climate events have shifted history as much as wars have. The Black Plague wiped out a third of Europe. Hurricanes reshape entire economies in the US. Wildfires in California destroy billions in property every year. Nature is not something you can negotiate with. You can only prepare for it. The fifth force is human innovation. This is the one that changes everything. Think about how the printing press transformed Europe, or how the Industrial Revolution replaced physical labor with machines. Today, we're entering the era of artificial intelligence and robotics. These aren't small improvements. These are forces that can change how wealth is created, who gets it, and who gets left behind. Now, here's the part that matters most for you. These five forces don't exist in isolation. They interact. Debt affects politics. Politics affects geopolitics. Wars drain resources. Technology shifts power. Nature disrupts everything. And when these cycles line up in the wrong way, that's when we see the big crashes, the big transitions, the collapse of empires. It might sound heavy, but here's the opportunity. When you learn to read these cycles, you stop reacting to chaos and start preparing for it. You can position yourself, your career, and your money so that no matter what happens in the world, you're not just surviving, you're moving forward. So let me ask you this. If history keeps repeating itself and the cycles are clear, how can you position yourself to be on the winning side of the next big shift? Because in the next section, we're going to talk about what happens when an empire starts to decline and why the United Kingdom's struggles might hold a warning for the United States. When we talk about the rise and fall of empires, there's no better example than the United Kingdom. A few centuries ago, Britain was the center of the world. Its navy ruled the seas. Its empire stretched across continents. It controlled global trade routes and currency flows. But then came the slow decline. Wars drained its wealth. Debt piled up. Other countries, like the United States, rose in power. And eventually, the United States replaced Britain as the dominant global power. That cycle has repeated throughout history. The Dutch once ruled global trade before Britain overtook them. Spain dominated the seas before losing power. Rome controlled much of the known world before collapsing from within. Every empire thinks it's invincible until it isn't. Today, the United Kingdom faces real challenges. Its national debt is heavy, its politics are fractured, its financial center in London is losing ground to other cities, and wealthy people are leaving. In fact, recent reports suggest that more millionaires are leaving the UK than almost anywhere else in the world. That tells you something important. People with capital tend to move toward opportunity and stability. They don't wait around for things to improve. They act. Here's the lesson for you. Money flows to where it's treated best. If you're living in North America, you have to ask, Kars, is my city, my state, or even my country still the best place for my money and my future? Because history shows us that when a system weakens, people don't just complain, they relocate, they take their skills, their money, their families, and they move toward growth. Think about it this way. Why did Silicon Valley explode in the US instead of somewhere else? It wasn't because the Bay Area had better weather than London. It was because the culture welcomed young entrepreneurs. Investors were willing to fund bold ideas, and capital markets were deep enough to scale those ideas globally. That combination of innovation and capital created trillion-dollar companies that changed the world. Now compare that to the UK today. Higher taxes, less appetite for risk, An environment that many entrepreneurs say feels heavy rather than encouraging. It's no wonder capital and talent drift away. Here's how you can apply this personally. If your city or state makes it impossible to get ahead financially, be willing to move. If your company doesn't reward innovation, look for one that does. If your current environment doesn't match your ambitions, create a new one. You're not where you started, and just like capital looks for better opportunities, you should too. The United Kingdom is proof of what happens when a powerful system loses its edge, and the question we all have to ask is simple. If Britain could lose its spot at the top, what makes us think America is immune? Because in the next part, we're going to look at whether the United States is already showing the same warning signs and what that means for your financial future. Now let's talk about the United States, the country many still see as the world's unshakable leader. But here's the hard truth. Ray Dalio doesn't see it that way, and if you look closely, you'll start to notice the cracks too. The United States has enormous strengths. It has some of the most innovative companies on the planet. It has deep financial markets that allow entrepreneurs to raise billions. It still has military power that no one else can match, and it has been at the center of the global order since 1945. But no empire stays at the top forever. According to Dalios' study of the last 500 years, great powers rise for about 80 to 100 years. They dominate, they innovate, they set the rules of the global system, and then they face the same challenges that brought down every empire before them. Let's look at those challenges one by one. First, debt and money. The U.S. is carrying record levels of debt, trillions upon trillions of dollars. If debt grows faster than income, it eventually crushes the system. Think of it like a household. If you keep swiping the credit card but your paycheck doesn't grow, at some point the bills catch up, and when lenders lose faith, the money itself loses value. Second, internal conflict. The U.S. is split in ways we haven't seen for decades. Political polarization is at record highs. The wealth gap is massive. The top 1% and 10% are doing incredibly well, but the bottom 60% of Americans struggle with basics. Many adults read at a 6th grade level or lower. When people stop believing the system works for them, they stop believing in the system at all. That's when democracy comes under real pressure. Third, geopolitical competition. The U.S. is the leading power today, but China is rising fast. You don't have to look far. Trade disputes, tech restrictions, military tensions in the Pacific. History shows that when a rising power challenges a dominant one, conflict is almost inevitable. Sometimes it's economic competition. Sometimes it's a full-scale war. Fourth, acts of nature. The U.S. has already seen billion-dollar disasters pile up. Hurricanes in Florida, wildfires in California, water shortages in the West. These shocks don't just destroy property, they strain government budgets and deepen inequality. Fifth, technology. The U.S. and China are locked in a technology race. Artificial intelligence, semiconductors, biotech, space exploration. Technology has always been the deciding factor in which nation rises to the top. The printing press gave Europe an edge. Industrial machines gave Britain power. Nuclear weapons ended World War II. And now AI may determine who leads the next global order. So here's the key question. Could America actually lose its place at the top within the next 50 to 100 years? According to Dalio, not only is it possible, it's more than likely. The U.S. is showing all the symptoms that past empires showed before decline: rising debt, political fights, social division, and a powerful rival waiting in the wings. What does this mean for you? It means you can't just assume the American dream will always work the way it has in the past. It means you need to think differently about where to build your career, where to live, and where to put your money. Here's a simple example. Imagine you're working in a company where half the employees are thriving and the other half are barely hanging on. Tension builds. People start taking sides. Some demand change. Others defend the old way. Eventually, the conflict makes the company unstable. That's what a divided nation looks like. And it affects jobs, investments, and opportunities. The United States is still incredibly strong, but strength alone doesn't guarantee the future. The real question is whether we as a society can come together. Can we find common ground? Can we build a strong middle that holds everything together? Or will division, debt, and technology accelerate a decline we don't see coming until it's too late? This is where your personal decisions matter more than ever. You can't control what happens in Washington or Beijing, but you can control how prepared you are, where you put your money, who you surround yourself with, and how you adapt to the changes that are coming. The cycles are real. They happened before, and they're happening again. The big question is, if the US is entering a risky part of its life cycle, what should you do to protect yourself, to protect your family, and to build wealth in a way that survives no matter who wins the global power struggle? Because in the next part, we're going to talk about the principle that helped Ray Dalio survive his biggest failures and how you can use the same principle to turn pain into progress. Let's talk about one of the most powerful ideas for building wealth and security. It's something Ray Dalio calls pain plus reflection equals progress. It sounds simple, but most people either run from pain or they repeat the same mistakes over and over again. The truth is, pain by itself teaches you much. It just hurts. Reflection is the part that transforms that pain into wisdom. Think back to the last time you lost money. Maybe you invested in a stock that tanked, or maybe you spent thousands of dollars on something you didn't really need. In that moment, you felt regret, maybe even shame. Most people stop there. They feel the pain but never ask, what did this experience just teach me? That's where Dalio took a different path. When he was 12 years old, he bought his first stock. He didn't know what he was doing. He picked the cheapest stock he could find because it was under $5 a share. He figured if it went up just a little, he'd make more money since he owned more shares. It turns out that company was on the verge of going bankrupt, but then something unexpected happened. Another company bought it. The stock tripled. And that little 12-year-old thought, this game is amazing. That lucky break got him hooked. But luck doesn't last forever. Later in his career, predicted a massive global debt crisis in the early 1980s. He was so confident he went all in, and he was wrong. The market went up instead of down. He lost money for himself, lost money for his clients, and hit rock bottom financially. He was so broke he had to borrow $4,000 from his dad just to pay the bills. Most people would quit right there, but he didn't. He asked himself, what can I learn from this pain? What principles can I create so I never make this mistake again? Two things changed his entire approach. First, he learned humility. He realized that no matter how smart he thought he was, he could always be wrong. Second, he learned to diversify instead of betting everything on one outcome. He spread his risk. That single shift allowed him to protect himself from being completely wrong, and it's one of the reasons Bridgewater became the largest hedge fund in the world. Now think about your own financial life. How many times have you made a mistake with money and just buried it? You went into credit card debt and tried to forget about it. Maybe you made an impulse purchase and told yourself it wasn't a big deal. But what if you paused, reflected, and wrote down a principle for next time? For example, let's say you got a huge tax refund one year and immediately spent it on gadgets. Later, you regretted it because an unexpected car repair drained your savings. Instead of just saying, I'll do better next time, you could write down a principle. Whenever I get a windfall, I will save half and spend half. That rule protects you from repeating the same mistake. Again, here's another example. Imagine you start a side hustle. You pour time and money into it, and it fails. You can either see it as a waste, or you can reflect and say, next time I'll test the idea with 5 customers before investing thousands. That principle will guide you for the rest of your life. Reflection creates clarity, and clarity builds confidence. When you know your rules, you don't get thrown around by fear and excitement. You don't need to rely on luck anymore. Now, here's the part most people miss. It's not about working harder. It's about creating rules for yourself, rules that turn chaos into structure, rules that make your decisions better over time. This is what wealth people do differently. They fail like everyone else, but they write down what they learn. They build a playbook, and every mistake becomes an investment in their future. So ask yourself, what's one painful mistake you've made with money? And what principle can you create right now that ensures you never make it again? Because in the next part, we're going to talk about how to stay flexible in a changing world, and why locking yourself into one path like a 30-year mortgage could actually be the biggest financial risk of your life. Now let's talk about flexibility, Because in times of uncertainty, the people who win are not the ones who dig their heels in. They're the ones who know how to move. Ray Dalio calls this the smart rabbit principle. A smart rabbit has 3 holes. If one is blocked, it can escape through another. 2 are blocked. It still has one more option. That flexibility is survival. Think about it in terms of money. If all of your income comes from one paycheck, you have only one hole. If that job disappears tomorrow, you're trapped. But if you have multiple streams of income, like a side business, investments, or even rental property, you've got options. You've got more than one hole to escape through. Now let's talk about where you live. For years, the traditional advice in North America was simple: save up, buy a house, lock yourself into a mortgage for 30 years, stay put. But here's the problem: that house might keep you stuck in the wrong place. Maybe the local economy starts to decline. Maybe better opportunities open up in another state, but you can't move because you're tied to a mortgage and a neighborhood you can't sell out of quickly. Flexibility is freedom. Sometimes renting is not a waste of money. Sometimes renting is buying freedom. The freedom to move to a new city, take a better job, or to chase an opportunity before everyone else sees it. Here's a real example. Think about tech workers in San Francisco. 10 years ago, it was the place to be. Startups everywhere, money flowing. But fast forward to today, high rent, companies moving out, remote work spreading. Many people who bought million-dollar condos are now stuck with high mortgages in a city that's losing its shine. Meanwhile, those who rented can pack their bags and move to Austin, Miami, or even back to smaller towns where the cost of living is lower and opportunities rising. Flexibility is not just about location, it's about life design. Ask yourself, do I have 3 holes like the smart rabbit? Or am I betting everything on one job, one city, one source of income on the passive path? We believe in creating resilience. That means building savings so you're not living paycheck to paycheck. It means investing in assets that can grow without you trading your time every single day. It means developing skills that travel with you no matter where you live. Because here's the truth: the world is not going to stay the same. Economies shift, politics change, technology disrupts industries overnight. And if you're tied down with no flexibility, you'll struggle to adapt. The smart rabbit always has a way out. And so should you. The question is, how do you actually build that financial strength? How do you go from 0 to your first 6 figures saved? That's what we're going to break down next. And once you see how Ray Dalio started his journey with just a few dollars, realize it's possible for you too. Let's go back to the beginning of Ray Dalio's story, because understanding how he built wealth from nothing shows us the practical steps anyone can take. He didn't start rich. He wasn't born into Wall Street. He wasn't a math prodigy or a top-of-class student. In fact, he says he hated school. Memorizing names and dates felt pointless to him. What excited him was the game of figuring things out on his own. At 12 years old, he started working odd jobs, delivering newspapers, mowing lawns, caddying for golfers at a local country club. He didn't have much money, but he had curiosity. One day he overheard people talking about the stock market. He thought, if I can buy stocks for less than $5 a share, I can own more shares. That means I'll make more money when they go up. It was a simple idea and honestly, not a smart one, because price doesn't tell you the quality of a company. But here's where luck came in. The company he picked was about to go bankrupt. Right before it collapsed, another company bought it out, and the stock tripled. That was enough to hook him for life. He realized this money game was fascinating, and he wanted to play it forever. Later, he barely made it into college. Then he went on to Harvard Business School. That experience opened his eyes. He met brilliant people. He was exposed to big ideas. But even there, he never stopped trading stocks. He kept learning through practice. After graduation, he worked on Wall Street. He was smart but also outspoken. He questioned authority. He challenged his bosses. Eventually, he got fired. Most people would panic, but Dalio had clients who liked his independent thinking. They still wanted his advice. So in 1975, he took the leap and started his own firm. That firm became Bridgewater Associates, and over 50 years it grew into the largest hedge fund in the world. Now here's the part that most people miss. It wasn't a smooth ride. There were big failures along the way. One of the hardest moments came in Dalio had built a strong case that American banks had lent more money to foreign countries than they could ever repay. He predicted disaster. He bet big on it. And then he was wrong. The stock market didn't collapse, it boomed. He lost money for himself and his clients, and he was forced to borrow $4,000 from his dad to pay for basic expenses. That could have been the end, but he treated the pain as tuition instead of walking away. He reflected, he asked, what went wrong? What did I miss? What principle can I write down to avoid this mistake again? From that moment forward, he operated differently. He learned to approach every decision with humility. He assumed he could be wrong. He sought out smart people to challenge his thinking. He built systems to test his ideas against history. He diversified his bets so that being wrong on one decision wouldn't destroy him. That shift changed everything. From being broke in 1982 to managing over $150 billion decades later, all because he refused to waste his pain. He turned it into progress. Now let's bring this back to your life. Maybe you've lost money on a business idea. Maybe you've made mistakes with credit cards. Maybe you stayed in a job too long and missed other opportunities. The key is not to avoid pain. The key is to stop and reflect on it. Write down the principle you learned. Turn that mistake into a permanent advantage. Here's a simple practice. Every time you make a financial decision, ask yourself two questions. Why did I make this choice? If it goes badly, what principle should I create to guide me next time? That one exercise can change the trajectory of your money and your life. It's not about being perfect. It's about getting better with every step. Now here's the question. If pain plus reflection equals progress, what pain in your life could you turn into your next breakthrough? Because in the next section, we're going to explore how principles and reflection lead to better decisions, and how writing down your own rules could be the smartest financial move you ever make. Now let's talk about principles. Because if pain and reflection are the raw ingredients, principles are the recipe that keeps you from making the same mistake twice. Ray Dalio did something most people never do. He wrote down his lessons. Every time he made a mistake, every time he got hit pain, he paused, he asked himself, what did I learn from this? What rule should I follow next time? And then he turned that rule into a principle he could use again and again. Think about it like this. If you touch a hot stove once and burn your hand, you don't need to touch it again. Remember, your brain builds a rule. Don't touch hot stoves. Dalio did the same with his financial mistakes. But he didn't leave it in his head. He wrote it down. He turned his experiences into a playbook. Over time, that playbook became a system. He built computer models that took his principles and tested them against history. He would ask, if I had made this decision during the Great Depression, what would have happened? If I had made it in the 1970s inflation crisis, would it have worked? This is like an early version of artificial intelligence, except instead of guessing, it was built on real data and rules. Now let's bring this to your finances. Most people say, I need to save more money. I need to invest better. But they don't have clear rules for how to do it. They rely on feelings in the moment, and feelings are dangerous guides. When markets go up, greed takes over. When markets crash, fear takes over, and both emotions lead to poor decisions. Here's how you can use principles in your own life. Write down every major financial decision you make. After you see the result, ask what you learned. Create a simple rule to follow next time. Test that rule in different situations. For example, if you bought a car that was way too expensive and it stressed you out, your new principle might be, I never spend more than 10% of my income on a car payment. Next time you're tempted by that shiny SUV on the lot, you have a rule to guide you. It's not about feelings anymore. It's about principles. Another example, maybe you invested in a trendy crypto project because your friends swore it was going to the moon, then it crashed. Your principle might be, I never invest in something I don't understand. That one rule alone could save you thousands of dollars in the future. Principles are powerful because they compound. Each mistake becomes a lesson. Each lesson becomes a rule. Each rule protects you from future mistakes. Over time, you build a framework for making decisions that is smarter than emotion, smarter than fear, smarter than ego. Dalio says the biggest tragedy is holding a strong opinion that's wrong. If you're open-minded, if you let others challenge your thinking, if you ask yourself, Could I be wrong? You turn blind spots into breakthroughs. On the passive path, that's exactly what we're focused on. Not chasing trends, not gambling on luck, but building principles that stand the test of time. Because when you have principles, you're no longer guessing. You're following a map. So here's the question. What's one principle you can write down today that will protect you from repeating a financial mistake tomorrow? Because in the next section, we're going to explore why your environment matters just as much as your effort, and how the people you surround yourself with can make or break your financial future. Your environment matters more than most people realize. You can have all the discipline in the world, but if you surround yourself with the wrong people, you'll constantly be fighting uphill battles. Ray Dalio built Bridgewater not just on smart investing, but on culture. He believed meaningful work plus meaningful relationships equals a meaningful life. That formula mattered to him more than just making money. And here's the truth. It matters just as much in personal finance as it does in business. Think about it this way. If you're trying to save money but all your friends spend every weekend at bars, you're swimming against the current. If you're trying to build a business but everyone around you tells you it's impossible, you start doubting yourself. Your environment either supports your goals or it silently pulls you away from them. That's why Dalio focused so much on building a culture of honesty and trust at his company. He had a simple rule. If someone talks behind another person's back 3 times, they're out. He wanted radical transparency. He wanted people to challenge each other openly because he knew that a team full of yes men creates weakness, but a team full of people who can debate ideas honestly creates strength. Now apply this to your own life. You don't need a 1,500-person hedge fund to use this principle. You just need to look at your circle, ask yourself, do the people around me push me to grow? Do they tell me the truth even when it's uncomfortable? Do they share my values? If the answer is no, it might be time to upgrade your environment. Here's an example from everyday life. Imagine you're trying to get out of debt. You start cooking at home instead of eating out. But your coworkers keep pressuring you to join them for expensive lunches every day. If you give in, your progress stalls. But if you surround yourself with just 1 or 2 friends who support your goal, suddenly it becomes easier. They'll share recipes. They'll remind you why you started, and they'll celebrate when you hit your first big milestone. Another example, think about someone starting a small online business in North America. If they hang around people who don't believe in online income, they'll be told it's too risky, that it won't work, that they should stick to a safe paycheck. But if they connect a community of entrepreneurs like those you find on platforms such as LinkedIn or mastermind groups, they'll get advice, support, and maybe even their first customers. This is why community is so powerful. It's not just about money. It's about accountability. It's about energy. It's about surrounding yourself with people who are playing the same game you're trying to play on the passive path. That's why we talk so much about building networks and relationships, because money is important. But without people who share your vision, you'll always feel like you're building alone. Here's a simple step you can take. Find one accountability partner. Someone who also wants to build wealth, save more, or start a business. Check in once a week. Share your progress, share your struggles, push each other forward. Because here's the real question. If your environment shapes your future, who are you surrounding yourself with today? And are they helping you move closer or pulling you further away from financial freedom? Stay with me, because next we're going to explore the role of hard work, humility, and open-mindedness, and why these qualities can be the difference between staying stuck and building the wealth and life you want. Let's break down 3 qualities that separate those who build lasting wealth from those who burn out hard work. Humility and open-mindedness. Hard work is the foundation. It gives you strength, it gives you discipline, it gives you momentum. Most people try to avoid hard work because the first step feels uncomfortable. Going to the gym hurts in the moment, but the long-term consequence is strength and health. Skipping the gym feels good now, but the long-term consequence is weakness. Money works the same way. Spending on things you don't need feels good right now, but the second-order consequence is stress and debt. Saving and investing may feel like a sacrifice in the short term, but the long-term consequence is freedom. That's why hard work is so valuable. It's not the work itself that matters. It's the power and options that the work creates later. But hard work alone is enough. That's where humility comes in. Ray Dalio learned this the hard way when he lost almost everything in. He realized that confidence can blind you. You can believe you're right, you can have all the data, but you can still be wrong. And if you're too proud to admit it, you'll repeat the same mistake until it destroys you. Humility means saying, I might not have the full picture. I need to listen, need to test my thinking. I need to let others challenge me. That mindset doesn't make you weaker. It makes you safer. It makes your decisions stronger. Open-mindedness is the third piece. Most people think being challenged is an attack. They defend their opinions like it's a fight. But being open-minded means you welcome challenges. You ask, what if I'm missing something? What if the other person sees what I don't? You want your ideas stress-tested, because if they survive pressure, they're probably strong enough to guide your future. Here's how you can use these qualities in your financial life. Work hard by building skills that pay off in the long run. Learn sales, learn coding, learn investing, things that compound. Stay humble by assuming you could be wrong about your financial decisions. Don't just buy a stock because you feel good about it. Ask someone smarter in that field what you might be missing. Stay open-minded by exposing yourself to different points of view. If you think real estate is the only way to build wealth, talk to someone who got rich in the stock market. If you think you'll never make money outside of your job, listen to people who built side hustles and passive income streams. Here's a real-world example. In the 90s, many Americans were convinced tech stocks would only go up, worked hard to save money, and invested everything in dot-com companies. When the bubble burst in 2000, millions lost their savings. The ones who survived were the people who had humility to diversify and the openness to learn new strategies instead of doubling down on a bad bet. Hard work gives you the engine. Humility keeps you from driving off a cliff. Open-mindedness gives you better maps along the way. The real question is, are you building a financial life on effort alone, or are you combining it with humility and openness to new ideas? Because in the next part, we're going to explore the most powerful force shaping our financial future today, technology and artificial intelligence, and why it could either make you rich or leave you behind. Technology has always been the wild card in human progress. It doesn't just add convenience, it rewrites the rules of the game. Ray Dalio points out that innovation has been one of the 5 forces driving history for centuries. The printing press gave knowledge to the masses. The steam engine powered the Industrial Revolution. Nuclear technology ended a world war and reshaped global power. Each leap in technology created new opportunities, and each leap also wiped out old ways of working. Today, the new force is artificial intelligence. AI is not just another app or gadget, intelligence itself. And intelligence is the most valuable resource in the world, more valuable than money, because money follows intelligence. The people and countries that control the smartest technologies attract the most capital and set the rules for everyone else. Look at what's happening right now. Trillions of dollars are being poured into AI, from self-driving cars to AI lawyers to robots that can operate in human environments. We're living in a moment that feels like the early days of the internet bubble. Everyone is rushing in. Some will strike gold, many will crash hard. The big question is, will AI and robotics empower people or replace them? Think about it. If a robot can perform surgery better than a doctor, if an AI can write contracts better than a lawyer, if software can do accounting in seconds, what happens to millions of jobs? History gives us clues. When machines replaced human labor during the Industrial Revolution, it created massive economic growth. But it also created massive social tension. Farm workers lost jobs to tractors. Textile workers lost jobs to machines. Entire industries disappeared, but new industries were born. The same is happening now, except instead of replacing muscle, technology is replacing brains. That's new territory, because for the first time, machines aren't just doing physical work, they're starting to think, and that raises a big question. Where do humans still add value? Here's the practical side for you. If you want to thrive in an AI-driven world, you need to play the parts of the game that machines can't replace. Creativity, human relationships, big picture thinking, emotional intelligence, the ability to connect dots in ways machine can't. For example, A small business owner in North America who uses AI to handle customer emails and bookkeeping can now focus on building better products and deeper customer relationships. They're not competing with AI, they're partnering with it. Another example, think about a teacher using AI to grade assignments. That teacher now has more time to mentor students one-on-one. AI takes care of the repetitive work while the teacher focuses on the human work. That's the key. Don't try to compete with machines on what they do best. Leverage them so you can do more of what only humans can do on the passive path. We talk a lot about this. Technology is not something to fear if you're prepared. It's something you can ride like a wave, but if you ignore it. If you stay stuck in old ways of working, you risk being left behind. So here's the question. Are you preparing yourself to work with technology as a partner, or are you waiting for the world to pass you by? Because in the next part, we're going to explore how to navigate uncertainty itself and how building resilience matters more than trying to predict the future. The truth about the future is simple. You can't predict it with certainty. No one can. Not billionaires, not governments, not even the smartest economists. But here's what you can do. You can build resilience. You can prepare yourself so that no matter what happens, you can adapt, you can survive, and you can grow. Ray Dalio often compares life to a series of seasons. There are good seasons when money flows and opportunities are everywhere. There are bad seasons when the world feels chaotic and unfair. And just like winter always follows fall, those hard seasons always come. Don't stop winter by predicting it. You get through it by preparing for it. Think about your own life in North America. The past few years have shown us how quickly things can change. A global pandemic shut down entire cities overnight. Inflation spiked to levels not seen in decades. Housing became unaffordable for millions, and jobs that once felt secure suddenly disappeared. If you were relying on everything to go right, that was a wake-up call. If you were resilient, if you had some savings, if you had multiple ways to earn, if you had built strong relationships, you had options, you could pivot, you could endure. Here's the lesson. Stop chasing certainty. Start building strength. You don't need to know when the next recession will hit. You don't need to know which stock will double next year. You just need to build a system that can handle surprises. Here are a few ways to do that. Keep a healthy cash cushion so emergencies don't break you. Diversify your investments across stocks, bonds, maybe even real estate. Learn skills that are valuable across industries. Avoid overextending yourself with debt that locks you in place. Build relationships with people who can support you when things get tough. Here's a simple real-world example. Imagine you're working a job in retail. You live paycheck to paycheck, and then the company downsizes. If you have no savings and no side income, you're in a crisis overnight. But if you've been driving for a rideshare company on weekends or building an online store on the side, that extra income becomes your second rabbit hole. It gives you breathing room while you figure out your next move. Another example, think about someone in their 40s with a mortgage and kids. They might feel trapped in their career because they can't risk losing their paycheck. But if they've built up a year of living expenses in cash and they've started investing in index funds, suddenly they're not trapped anymore. They can take a calculated risk, maybe start a business, maybe move to a better city, maybe change careers. That's resilience. It's not about predicting what will happen. It's about preparing for whatever happens. This is the heart of financial freedom. It's not about being rich for a moment. It's about being unshakable over a lifetime. On the passive path, believe that true wealth is not just about having more. It's about having peace of mind. It's about being able to sleep at night, knowing you're ready for whatever comes next. So here's the question. If you can't predict the storm, how strong is your boat? And what would your life look like if you built it to float no matter how rough the waters get? Because in the final part, we're going to bring all of these lessons together. And I'll show you the simple steps you can take right now to build your own path to lasting financial freedom.